You need to get the lawyers and at least the company HR people involved.
You need to look at your policy. You need to know what your rights are within your workplace, and you need to follow those.
Now, what I find interesting is the idea of branding yourself. And several times Julia has mentioned this woman who had the affair not only with David Letterman but also with the producer who's alleged to have tried to extort $2 million from him. Boy, she certainly branded herself in a negative way, didn't she? So do we have to be concerned about branding ourselves as the gal who's always going after the boss?
Right, just like in high school, you don't want to be the girl that everybody in the locker room knows as well. I mean, you definitely want to use discretion. You want to make adult decisions, which often sometimes comes from going out after work for drinks for a lot of people. So you have to be very careful. You are your own brand in the workplace. And this woman took it upon herself to have consecutive decisions, which really did brand herself. So you want to make sure that you're in line with your integrity and in line with who you really are and you want to be perceived as. Because she really might have liked these men that she had been with, but now her perception from the rest of the world is not that at all. And she's going to be under attack and she's going to be scrutinized for that.
Now, likewise, the boss, whether it be a male or female, also has to be aware of the brand that he or she is putting out there.
Absolutely. The question then becomes, I mean, do you need to get ahead? Is this the way you get ahead? Is that what's being perceived in the workplace? And that's what the boss has to be concerned about when they're dating someone who's beneath them. Is the perception, is the feeling, or is the reality that to get ahead, you need to be with him
or
her?
Power? I mean,
or is it about power?
I think bosses lose credibility when they hook up with their subordinates. Like in that close of a situation where they're still working together, they're in the same department, or something that it's that close. They lose credibility amongst all of their subordinates because perhaps they're viewed as, you know, a pervert or someone who's acting
or as David
inappropriately.
Letterman said, creepy.
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 That's right. And you know, a boss has to keep credibility, has to keep an air of authority so that everyone does their job and things run smoothly.
So if you are going to date someone at work, whether it be the boss or just someone who's in the next cubicle, do you hide it or are you open about it? So that if it does go south, you know, everyone knows about it, or are you better off keeping it a secret? But then if you're found out later on, it looks like you were hiding something.
I say you hide it until you see where it's going.
Until the wedding invitations go out.
You need to know what's going to happen.
On my finger.
I happen to know people that worked together and dated, and they thought no one knew about it. And it's like, hello, could you have had a big sign over your head that said, yes, we all know that you're interested in each other? They thought they were hiding it so well.
Well, it can be very obvious, and I think people do try and hide it, and I think being more discreet is probably more of an astute thing to do versus coming out, and because then everyone starts to have their own scrutinizing outwardly, and it can actually really affect everyone around that dynamic adversely.
You don't want to be airing your dirty laundry in the office, and that's what people do a lot of times when they're in a relationship, is that every little bad thing, maybe you want to complain to your girlfriend, but if your girlfriend's your workmate, you better be careful about that.
So you need to be smart, you need to be selective. I did ask this question as well on Facebook, and let me tell you, the personal stories that came back in from my friends absolutely shocked me. This is what some of them had to say about love in the workplace. Michael says, well, Lynn, my wife and I met 20 years ago in Philadelphia. I was her boss, and we've been married for 18 years. So yes, it can work. It's how you make a marriage work, not where you met each other. Nathaniel writes, I met my wife on the job. Nothing wrong with a workplace romance. You just have to be smart about it. And Allison says, hi, Lynn. Yes, it worked for me and Mark. We met and were married within a year. That was 15 years ago and 2 kitties later. So there are some success stories. Obviously, some of these folks know the recipe for making workplace romances actually work. Do you think one of you eventually has to leave the company? Let's say you have found your soulmate, it is working in terms of off the job, but would you suggest that people then say, okay, one of us has to make a decision to take it elsewhere?
There's
no, not if it's
unanimously.
Working.
Okay.
No.
There's no reason any one person should feel the need to give up their position just because they're in a successful relationship. So
unless it causes a conflict internally and people feel like somebody is getting advantages because of that relationship, and then a lot of animosity would stir up between colleagues. But other than that, if the dynamic is working for everyone personally and also professionally, and also sometimes companies are so big that they're in one department or division and the other person is so far away and so far removed. I think the only time it really would cause conflict is if people kept saying you're only getting ahead because of that, and you might then need that decision to be made.
Sometimes you actually have to work harder,
right?
Because everyone thinks that things are coming your way, so
That's
sometimes you
right.
actually work harder.
That's right.
What do we think is going to happen with David Letterman? Getting back to where we
Nothing.
started this conversation, you think it's just
Zero.
null and void?
I think that if there were a lot more bad things coming out of the woodwork, I mean, let's face it, there's only 3 women. It's Burkett, it's the intern named Holly, and it's the woman who everyone knew about, who we had the long-term relationship with, the writer
Regina
on the
Lasco,
show. Yeah,
right.
no, not Regina, another workplace person.
Ooh.
Regina's the current. Yeah, so it's only 3, and this is an incredibly
Listen
famous
to her,
man.
only 3.
Yeah, but he's been doing that show for decades. I mean, come on, it's only 3 women. So that's, my God, that's actually a good thing. I'm patting him on the back. It's not that bad. I think that if all these women were going to be coming out of the woodwork, I think we would have seen something already. I think that he handled it brilliantly with his preemptive strike. I think he's going to sail on and be just fine.
I wonder if there's someone, though, now who's thinking they can exploit this situation and say, hey, you know what, I couldn't say anything 5 years ago, but now I'm going to make a case.
There's always that concern that there's something out there that nobody knows. And the other issue is that only 3, well, maybe only 3 were successful and agreed. Maybe there's a whole lot more that were not part of that club. But we don't know. And we're speculating.
As we
but,
speak.
But yet they've all managed to remain silent.
And if any of them call you, I'm sure you'll take their calls. Now, we talked about what potential there might be for lawsuits, or at least some sort of slapping of the wrist from his production company or either CBS. Jen's pointed out that his ratings have not suffered, and this has to be amazing in this climate, because if it's a politician or a clergyman, both of whom he's made fun of on the air, people are clamping down on them. For some reason with him, it seems to be a laughing matter.
Right. It's amazing, actually, because you would think that some of the people that he had pointed fingers at would come out now and have their own jokes, but it seems that everybody has actually extended a sense of, we know where he's coming from, and he's handling it great. His ratings are up. I think in many ways he's had a little bit of a rebirth here, and it's not necessarily always going to come from a positive circumstance, but like I said earlier, he humanized himself in a way that people can relate to him.
Would you have the politicians do that same thing?
Yeah, I absolutely would. I think
that they crimes, though. David Letterman was just hooking up with his staff. He wasn't even married. He wasn't even committing adultery. The politicians were hooking up with prostitutes. That's a crime.
And the other thing,
I mean, it's like it's apples and oranges.
Flying to Argentina and those kinds of things.
And I think the biggest factor is we're not trusting him with our money. We're not trusting him to be our moral leader. We trust him to entertain us, and that's what it's all about.
And too, I think at the end of the day, the thing that matters most to these people is not their money, but their reputation.
All right, on that note, we're going to say thank you for being here. Wonderful to have you back,
Thanks
Julia,
for having
Edith,
us.
and of course, Jen, great to have you back here as well. Always a pleasure to have you with us. Until the next time, my thanks to my crew and to you for watching. We'll see you.